Good evening. Welcome to our webinar on the importance of time in target glucose range. Our guest speakers tonight are Jane Overland, nurse practitioner, total diabetes care and consultant for Medtronic, and Rob Palmer. Jane has been helping people with type 1 diabetes for nearly 30 years. She has been working with JDRF and co-wrote the book Straight to the Point. She has been helping people live their life to the full. Rob Palmer is our patient living with type 1 diabetes for the past 35 years. Here tonight, he will share with us his experience and his stories. My name is Sonia People. I'm part of the digital marketing team here at Medtronic Diabetes, and I'll be your host for tonight. So let's get started.
Oh,
are we with us? We're on. We're on. Hello, how's it going? This is Jane.
Yep, and this is Rob. Welcome to the Jane and Rob show. Okay, so Rob, one of the things that when you go and see your diabetes specialist, one of the things they often talk to you about is whether your HbA1c is at target.
Yep.
And as you know, you can travel different roads to get to a particular A1C. So,
correct.
Yeah. So I think your A1C at one point was 5.8.
Yeah, I thought I was doing fabulously well, right? You go in there and you bluff everyone with the 5.8 HbA1c. You know, they qualify your insurance policy. They do all sorts of things based on that. And then, but the thing is, what you don't see is how often I would spend up around 18, and then how often you'd spend, you know, peeling yourself off the pavement because your blood sugar dropped like a rocket to zero.
So you can get an HbA1c that's at target by, you know, mild fluctuations in your blood glucose.
Yep.
Or you can get that same HbA1c, as you said, by just going up and down on that sort of roller coaster. I think you described it one time as being on the Wild Mouse at the
Wild Mouse at Luna Park. That's
yep.
right, up you go. And it's a fun ride, but it feels awful.
Yeah. So I think we've got to be really careful that when we're talking about our goals, you know, that number, that HbA1c, while it's important, it's not actually the be-all and end-all.
Yeah.
It's about how much time your blood glucose levels are within a target that you feel your very best.
Yeah, that's it. By the way, we are in the corner of a room. Next time we're going to go to Jane's place where it's much nicer outlook. But look, having the time in range thing, it feels better to have time in range, and you know, you don't. What I lost being up and down out of range so often was the feeling of what a hypo was. So you wouldn't feel a hypo coming until you were 1.8, you know, and all of a sudden your eyes are rolling back in your head, you've hit the ground and someone's running to get something for you to help you, right? And, you know, as a young guy doing an apprenticeship as a carpenter, apprentice carpenter, I'd be going to work having tried to fix a high blood sugar that I found in the morning with insulin, then driving to work because my blood sugar was too high to have any food, not eating until I got to work, by which stage it had dropped from 15 or plus down to 3, and you find yourself quite a lot just catching it before you had got to a point where you have a real problem.
So it's a bit like closing the door after the horse has bolted all the time.
Well, yeah, the horse is halfway down the road. You might have a leash on it, but then you shut the door on that, you'd almost pull its head off.
So we do know that, look, I don't have diabetes, and for people without diabetes, blood glucose is usually somewhere between about 3.9 and 7.8, although interestingly, it's not bad. Interestingly, when I've worn continuous glucose monitoring, I actually run at quite a low blood glucose, so I'm often about 3.5. And I've tried my hardest to get it to go up by, you know, eating a huge bowl of pasta and, you know, a family pack of Maltesers.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Sorry about that. But interestingly, when I would go for a run, my glucose would go up to 8.3. Now, both of those levels are actually outside what they say is normal. But I spend most of my time between 3.5 and 7.8.
I always found, with sport, as you mentioned, your blood sugar going up when you're running.
Yeah.
I found playing rugby, I played rugby as a kid for many years, and I would check my blood sugar at half time because that was the rule. You could play, but you have to check your sugar. And I would find that my blood sugar, I'd start with the blood sugar 6 or 7, and it would be at 18 to 24 by half time. because of that stash of glucose in your liver just dumping on you in the middle of the game, because your body is basically saying, you're going to die out here, mate, unless I feed you.
Yeah, so it's actually normal for blood glucose levels to go up when you exercise. It's just that it's meant to go up by, 5 millimoles, not 19.
Not through the roof.
Not through the roof. So for you, because you've got diabetes, trying to keep it right within that very tight range, given the tools that we have, we've often said to people, try and keep your blood glucose between about 3.9 and 10. And we do know from research that most people with type 1 diabetes, despite their best efforts, because of the sort of tools that we've, given you, it's hard to get yourself in that range even 50% of the time. Would you say that that's been the case for you?
It was very difficult.
Yeah.
It just wasn't happening. And I think there's also a mental thing where as a young person, I was told a lot that I had to keep my HbA1c down or I was in all sorts, right? So your subconscious wants to keep yourself around 3 or 4 because you sort of fear condemnation by, those who are looking at your results, but also, your long-term forecast is not so bright.
Yeah.
So there was that feeling that you had to keep yourself low. And in order to keep yourself low, I was dropping hypo all the time. And I think that's contributed to the lack of awareness of hypos as well, which is far from safe.
So, why we don't want your glucose levels to be too high, there's also problems with your glucose levels being too low. So just because you might be able to talk to me with a blood glucose of 1.9 does not make a blood glucose of 1.9 okay.
I will forget that conversation in a real hurry, Jane.
Yeah. Okay. So as we know, the new Medtronic 670 pump
is brilliant.
Yeah? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Okay, so I had never used a pump. I was doing multiple daily injections for many, many years, and I figured that everything was great with that. And I had this control that I thought was immaculate. But in reality, it wasn't until I went on CGM that I could see the mistakes that were being made by me daily. And also the biggest the eye opener for me was what was happening while I was asleep. So the most amazing thing with the pump and the new 670 is to watch what it does overnight and to see the pump making adjustments or supplying insulin when your blood sugars are starting to rise. And then if it does start to drop off, it stops supplying insulin. So, and you can see it working. When you look at the screen, you've got pink dots where it's supplying insulin and then no pink dots where it's not. And you can see your blood glucose level on this flat line responding to that treatment or administration of insulin like a bomb. Like it's fantastic. So that was my biggest hallelujah moment was thank you for that.
And look, I think you said you found out where you were going wrong. It wasn't necessarily that you were going wrong. It's just that the treatment that we were using, like we know if we look at your upload from your pump now, your insulin requirements are different every day. And yet we were asking you to take a set dose and hoping that was doing its bit. Whereas now it's changing every day.
That is fair point. That's true.
Yeah.
Because you would have a long-acting insulin, right, that would work. And the thing is with the pump, long-acting insulin has now been erased.
That's right.
So there's no such thing because you basically the pump is acting like a pancreas. Okay, so it's trying to simulate what a pancreas does as it sees changes in your blood sugar. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, so we're still not 100% there, but it's certainly much closer than we've ever
it's working
been.
pretty well.
And what I think is really impressive, like that first week after we put you on auto mode and we did that upload, so you were 85% in target.
Boom. It just out of the park. I thought, to go from, I can't imagine how far out of range I was when I was doing multiple daily injections. It was up and down all over the shop. The time in range was usually either that way or that way. So I wasn't actually in range. I was passing through range, right? And then I started using a pump, the older 640, and the time in range increased dramatically and you could watch it stay there overnight. But then what was happening, you had this basal insulin rate that was set and it would cut off if it needed to, but it was a set rate nonetheless. So now what the new 670 pump has done is take away the basal rate altogether so that assesses how your glucose is going and gives you little bits of insulin only as you need it.
That's right. So it's still giving you some basal insulin, but it's making a decision every 5 minutes whether you need a little bit more, whether you need a little bit less. And so 85% of that week and subsequent weeks, you've been within that target of 3.9 to 10.
It was pretty awesome. And you know what happened though, Jane, was the only times that it really got out of range. It was out of range for such a short time. It was just peeking its nose above the hill, and it would alarm, it would set you up, and it'd say, hey, buddy, you're on your way just to get out of range. How about you have a think about what you're doing? And sometimes that's all you needed was just someone to say, or your pump to say, you're on the way out, mate. Can you check it out?
And I think what's really impressive is that the percentage of time that you've been low is like 1%.
Yeah, 1% under, and that's only under for a small time as well.
That's right.
The other thing that happens is because the pump is making these adjustments to your insulin management, when you do have a hypo, actually I haven't had a hypo on the pump. I haven't had it. It doesn't exist. So I have gone down low and it says, right, I'm not giving this guy any insulin, any background insulin. So it's like your basal or your long-acting has just been made to disappear, and then that sugar that's drifting low just sort of bottoms out and scoops around the corner and just out back the other way.
So that's what I mean about you can get that same A1C by what you were doing before, or you can do it by sitting right within that sort of normal range. And I said to you earlier tonight when I saw you, you look really, really well. I mean, you've never looked you've never looked unwell, but you look really, really well. And I think that, you know, it's often the spouse that will actually say, thanks, Jane, the best thing you've ever done is put my husband or put my wife on an insulin pump.
Yeah, right.
Because their temperament is better. Because you know how you get titchy when your sugar's high and titchy when your sugars are low?
Titchy's a nice way to put it, Jane.
Yeah, being polite.
Yeah.
So, so time and range is important, not just for you, but for your loved ones.
Yeah, very much so. And it gives you a confidence, you know, like it's to know that you're in that target range so much more just gives you confidence, and you don't say no to things, or you don't consider things as much because you know that there's something behind you backing up your decisions to live.
So something I learned when I did my training on the 670, and I think this is really profound, for every 8% you increase your time in range, so if you go to 50 to 58%, that's a month where you're in range. You've improved. You're in range for 1 month more than you were before. So imagine going to 50 to 85. You're actually in range for more, like a third of a year. That's incredible when you think of it like that.
A third of a year more than what you were?
Yes.
Not bad.
It's not bad, is
I like it.
So when you just look at the percentages, it doesn't really hit you, but 8% is equal to a month. So going from 50 to 85.
You know, and it's interesting you talk about time in range, and time in range is important, but for someone living with diabetes, time in range is not something that you consider. Don't even think about it. Whereas what I think about is time spent feeling good, right? And it's the time that it's not so much the time spent feeling good, it's the time that isn't there where you feel bad. You know, there was so much time where you would feel that drain of waking up at 3 a.m. with a blood sugar 15, your mouth dry, it was just horrible. That's all gone.
Yeah. So it's amazing.
So
isn't it?
you just don't get it.
Yeah.
And you wake up, you know, you can go out, watch the rugby with the boys and have a pretty good night, and then wake up and, you know, and everything seems feel fine.
Yeah, that's terrific. I remember when you sent that screenshot to me where you had that flat line, went boom. That was such a magic moment for me.
Yeah,
as it was for you.
I remember it was only I've been on the 670 for perhaps
month?
Yeah, not long.
Yeah.
And this, you know, we'd had a few cans,
a
couple of Sossos and a burger or whatever it was. Watched the rugby, had a great night. Went to bed pretty late, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, I got up and everything was actually, I slept until about 8:30, and then got up and looked at the track, and it was dead flat all that time in the morning, where normally you'd have been woken up 3 times, going to the toilet, feeling rubbish, was absolutely flat. And then I went, you know what? I think I might have something to eat now at 9 o'clock in the morning. And the other thing is, if you tell this pump what you're doing slightly before you do it, and there's a little bit of, I guess, self-discipline required from that point of view, where you just want to try and tell this pump what you're doing slightly before it happens. Because as fabulous as it is, it's not a miracle machine. It can't anticipate your decision to have a toasted cheese sandwich at 9 in the morning, right? So as long as you tell it,
Yeah.
after you've told it, you wait that 10, 15 minutes, it starts to drop your sugar, your food starts to increase your sugar, and everything just runs down the bowling alley.
Yeah, so we're actually doing a webinar on that. I think it's going to be released sometime soon, where we're sort of talking about the tips of how to get the best out of your 670.
Yeah, cool. All right, we'll dive into that.
But anyway,
Stay tuned.
I think there are some questions that have been sent through. Is that right?
Yep. So, Rob, that was really great, the definition that you mentioned, time in range, being time feeling good. I really liked that. But our first question from the registrants tonight, how much does it cost to get started on the MiniMed 670G system?
Okay, so that's a really good question. I think the best way to do it is the 670 system or the CGM?
Oh, the CGM.
Oh, the CGM, okay. So I think the best way to do it is buy a subscription, and then that's $250 a month. And
remember, if you're under 21, it's free. The government gives it to you, right?
Well, that's true. If you're under 21, and there are some other, so now, if you are over the age of 21 and you have a high clinical need, which means you're having some really serious high
Tell you
lows.
what, I had a dead set high clinical need.
Yeah.
I was going to die one day from a hypo, I'm sure of it.
So at the moment, they're only making it available to people on concession cards, but we just keep on fighting, so it's made available to everybody. Or if you are a woman and you're about to have a pregnancy or you are pregnant, you can get it on the NDSS. But otherwise, the best way to do it is with a subscription. It costs $250 a month. So you pay that for 12 months, $250 a month for 12 months. You get the transmitter that you attach to the sensor. And if you think of it, like I would probably spend that on coffee a month. You
don't have to sort of, substitute too much to find that money that you're spending on other things.
Look, diabetes does cost a lot of money. There's no doubt about that.
You know what? Sometimes you just got to suck it up and say, I have something that is, a disease that I may not deserve, I may not have asked for, but I have this anyway, and I've got to look after it. Because to look after it, if you don't look after it, you feel rubbish. And I don't want to spend my life feeling rubbish. I want to spend it as well as I possibly can. And that's been something that I've always been determined to do. And diabetes is not something that anyone really has to let stop them doing anything.
No, that's so true. You can't be a commercial pilot, but that's about it.
No, well, I don't think you can join the army either. But, you can do just about anything.
Yeah. So it's about $250. Well, it is $250 a month unless you are eligible on the NDSS.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got another question. It's from one of our older registrants. I'm a 71-year-old pensioner and I can't afford private health cover, but my specialist told me that insulin pumps would be going on the NDSS in July at a subsidised price.
Over to you, Jane.
Okay, gosh, I wish that was true. Unfortunately, it's not. But if you are 71 and you have a concession card and you are having issues with hypoglycemia, then you could use one of the other continuous glucose monitoring systems. There's one that talks to your phone, and the phone can be set to actually let you know 20 to 30 minutes before you're going low.
Or a special someone as well.
Yeah.
You can get alarms sent to someone that, when you're feeling low, sometimes you're the least able to look after yourself. And, I'm one to tell you, once you reach that zone, you're just begging for someone to walk in the room and say, hey, have something to eat.
Well, that's right. So the continuous glucose monitoring, we know that even if you're using multiple daily injections or a pump, there's a lot of benefit from continuous glucose monitoring. And, once you get down to that sort of 2 or 3 level, you have to treat yourself. You just can't.
Yeah.
So if you're warned when you're 5 or 6, that gives you plenty of time to...
The other beautiful thing with CGM is that it will show you parts of the day on a long-term average graph, right, where you can see how your day's travelling, and it shows you where you can make minor adjustments to your insulin management so that you're the trend can flatten out a bit. There's obvious places where things occur on a regular basis that get shown up by it.
Yeah, so just the pump, I must admit, is a bit like the Pinnacle, but just because you can't afford the Pinnacle doesn't mean you can't get benefits from continuous glucose monitoring or have access to continuous glucose monitoring.
Even trying it on for a week or two. You try it on for a week or two and you'll be amazed at what it shows you. I feel a bit nude. It feels like I'm dreaming and I'm walking down the street to get milk from the shop with no clothes on when I'm not wearing the CGM. So, if there was, it's not on, and I feel like I've got to check my blood sugar every 3 minutes just to keep up with the information that the CGM provides.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Another question that we have is, I've been told the sensors are not accurate.
Oh, what would you say to that, Rob?
I'd say hog swallow. I'd say it's pretty accurate. I haven't had, when you calibrate using a finger stick and you compare the two, they're rarely, rarely different.
Yeah.
And if what you do notice with the CGM is that I had one occasion where I, half removed the sensor from my butt, and the machine told me pretty immediately that there was a problem because
and look, I think that even when you prick your finger, how sometimes you prick your finger and you get a blood glucose and you go, actually, that doesn't feel right, and then you follow it up with a second one.
Oh, that's right. I was spreading honey on the toast with my finger, and then I checked my sugar. And that's right, and that's what that was.
Okay, so I think it's important to know that all the blood glucose meters in Australia, to get into Australia to be used, have to give you a result that's within 15% of what your glucose really is. And these systems, the continuous glucose monitoring systems, are within 10% of what your glucose is. So they're actually better than some of the blood glucose meters people are using now, and certainly much better than the meters we used, even 5 or 10 years ago.
What I have noticed is that the sensor glucose reading will sometimes differ from your blood glucose reading if your blood sugar is moving one way or the other. I'm not sure which way is more.
Well, it's like a horse and carriage. So the blood is the horse, the tissue is the carriage. So they will follow each other up and down.
Yes.
But there may be a 5-10 minute lag time. But the lovely thing about continuous glucose monitoring, you're not just getting a single number. Okay, so if you're 6.8, like you go, boom, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
But if you're 6.8 and you've got 3 hours going down, that means you're falling quickly. That's not where you want to be.
Oh, yeah, that is the best ever. Yeah, Jane. So when your blood sugar is moving, the CGM, because, as you say, because it's been taking snapshots every 3 minutes, it's showing you exactly what's not just happening, but what's going to happen. So, when you look down and you say, you get an alarm saying you are heading towards a low blood sugar. And if there is, this is before the pump, okay, the dramatic falls don't happen so much when you're connecting to the pump as well. But, the warning system is awesome. And so you've been given, instead of looking through a straw and seeing a little dot on the wall that says your blood sugar, you can see a whole picture of blood sugars for the last, 24 hours to show you where your blood sugar is heading, which is invaluable.
So the accuracy, that long and short of it is, it's just as accurate, if not more accurate than the meters you've been using. And it gives you such useful information because 6.8, well, that could be fabulous, or it actually might not be fabulous if you're rising quickly or falling quickly. And the lovely thing with the 670 pump, if you're falling quickly, the chances are the pump's got your back and you're not going to get to that low.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And look, the other thing, and I know that a lot of people have this where you have a pump you have a CGM phobia because you're worried about having something attached to you. And that was for me, that lasted for 30 years before I got over that hump. And, I'm disappointed in myself for letting it take so long, but it's something that everyone has to deal with in their own time, in their own space, so that, you think, I don't want that attachment. Can I just tell you that once you start using a CGM, there's no feeling of attachment. There's actually a feeling like you've got a security blanket around you, and it's like a Kevlar jacket, and you can there's a wall there. I'm going to run through it. And your Kevlar jacket will let you run through the wall, and your CGM is just there to say, hey, you're doing really well running through walls, pal. Keep going. So, yeah, I can't see any downside to CGM whatsoever. And the feeling that I thought I would have of being, connected to something or being reliant on something that wasn't my own body doesn't exist. And I actually feel a lot more free and able because I know where my blood sugars are going and where they've been.
That's fantastic. We've just got one last question. What is the point if I still have to bolus?
Do you want to answer that one, Rob?
Yeah, well, look, there is so much point. I mean, I could stand here for the next hour and a half and tell you about all the points that are really worth having. But bolusing is something that your body you just sort of got to do it, because without bolusing, there's a pump that just can't possibly keep up with your decision to eat something at the last minute, right?
It's actually the technology, the pump technology is quite good. It's just that the insulins we've got at the moment aren't rapid enough, and they're really working on they are working on a very rapid acting insulin. And once we've got that, who knows? Maybe the pump can respond soon enough to when you have something to eat. But the long and the short of it is, when you take some insulin, it takes about 15, 20 minutes to get a high enough level in your, but as soon as you put food in your mouth, your blood glucose starts to rise.
It goes really quickly,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
So the insulin's got to catch up. I mean, remember when we were taking insulin out of pigs?
Yeah.
Come on, we've come a long way. And, technology is pretty amazing, and what your phone can do now is quite incredible. And pumps are moving at a not dissimilar pace.
Yeah.
And it is not long before, you'll just be able to look at food and say, that's what I'm having, and there'll be a message that will go to something, and it'll just sort you out.
But also, imagine going to bed knowing that you're going to be safe during the night. I don't think you can devalue that.
That is true.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you feel going to bed with a blood sugar of less than 5.5, but if I have got my pump on and I have a look and I can see what's been happening for the last 2 hours, and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to bed, all of a sudden the pump has said, right, I'm not going to give you any long-acting insulin, or not long-acting, I'm not going to give you any bolus or any insulin while your blood sugar is 5.4, and it watches it drift up. And then as it drifts up, it gives you a bit more. It's not so much the bolus action itself is not why the pumps are so wonderful. And I think a pump is not designed to give bolus. It's designed to make life simple in so many other ways.
And look, one thing that you said to me too some time ago was that it's an absolute luxury not to have to eat.
Yeah, that's it. True. When I actually had forgotten about what it's like to be hungry, because you find that, when I was doing multiple daily injections, I would have my long-acting insulin, and so you would definitely have a pattern of blood sugar behaviour that was a result of that. But then also you'd have your insulin for breakfast, insulin for this, insulin for that. And I was having multiple daily injections for all the food I was eating, but I found that I was chasing insulin with food, and then when I'd had too much food, I was chasing the food with insulin, and I was in this vicious pattern of following my insulin regime with food or one or the other. And I just never, ever allowed myself to be hungry. There was not a moment of the day where I thought, you know what, I'm starving. But then once the pump started, and I realised I could wake up, I could have a cup of tea, and then go and get the kids to school, walk the dog, maybe go and do, A, B, and C, visit a job in whoop, and then come back, and then realise at 1:30 in the afternoon that I had not had a crumb, and my blood sugar was still sitting at this beautiful little spot that it had been all day, because I had a pump that was actually watching my glucose level and reacting to what was happening as it happened. So, that was amazing. And so I would say, oh my God, I'm hungry. And the feeling of being hungry was fantastic. And I thought, okay, I like this. It's great.
So the long and the short of it is, there are many benefits of being on the 670.
Yeah, the bolusing is just something I guess you've got to work with.
Yeah, nothing's perfect.
That's right. Let's face it, type 1 diabetes is a pain in the butt.
That's great. Thank you so much for your experience and your insights and your stories tonight. We look forward to hearing more from you very, very soon. Thank you again.
Thanks,
Top
Sonia.
stuff. Love it.
Bye.